I still remember the exact moment I realized my life was never going to be the same. Not because something wonderful was happening, but because everything I had built, everything I had believed in, was quietly collapsing around me while 200 people sipped champagne and pretended not to notice. My name is Emma Calloway. I'm 27 years old. I grew up in a small town outside of Savannah, Georgia, where everybody knew your name and your business and your mama's business too. I wasn't the prettiest girl or the smartest girl or the most ambitious girl. I was just Emma, the one who arranged wildflowers in mason jars and left them on neighbors' porches. The one who cried at commercials and meant every word she said. The one who believed, with a stupid and stubborn kind of faith, that being good and being kind and being real would eventually be enough. For a long time, I thought I had proof that I was right. His name was Derek Hollies. Derek was everything I wasn't, at least on the outside. Polished, confident, from old Atlanta money, the kind of family that had a name on a hospital wing and a lake house in North Carolina. He walked into the flower shop where I worked one Tuesday afternoon in October, looking for something for his mother's birthday, and he looked at me like I was the most interesting thing he'd seen all year. Not the flowers, me. We dated for 3 years. 3 years of Saturday morning farmers markets and late-night drives, and him telling me that money didn't matter, that the real world was the one you built with the person you loved. I believed every word. I believed it the way only a girl who grew up with very little can believe in something that finally feels like abundance. When he proposed, I cried so hard I couldn't speak for a full minute. I called my mother from the parking lot of the restaurant, still shaking, and she cried too. We were both so sure, so completely sure. The engagement was 6 months long. 6 months that started out feeling like a dream and slowly, quietly, turned into something else. Derek's mother, Margaret, was a tall woman with white blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She took over the wedding planning the way a storm takes over a sky. Gradual at first, then total. The venue I loved was too small. The dress I chose was too simple. The guest list I put together was trimmed and replaced with names I didn't recognize, business associates and family connections, and people who mattered to the Hollies name. I kept telling myself it was fine, that the wedding was just one day and the marriage was forever. I kept shrinking, kept adjusting, kept smiling through fittings and tastings and planning meetings where my opinion was heard and then gently, firmly ignored. And Derek let it happen. That was the thing I kept pushing down, the thing I refused to look at directly. He let it happen every single time. The morning of the wedding, I was in the bridal suite at the top of a venue that felt more like a museum than a place where real people got married. My best friend Lily was doing my hair, and she kept looking at me in the mirror with an expression I told myself was just nerves. The flowers were everywhere, white and cream and pale gold. I had chosen every single variety myself. Peonies, garden roses, eucalyptus, a few sprigs of lavender tucked in at the edges because lavender meant devotion, and I thought that was beautiful. I still think that was beautiful. The knock came at 20 minutes to the hour. Derek's best man, a guy named Cole who I had never particularly liked, opened the door with the expression of someone who had been asked to deliver a grenade. He held out a small, folded piece of paper. He said, "Emma, this is from Derek." And then he left before I could respond. I unfolded it slowly. 4 words. Just 4 words written in Derek's familiar, neat handwriting. I can't do this. No explanation. No apology. No please forgive me or I'm so sorry or even a phone number to call. 4 words and a blank white space where the rest of my future was supposed to be. Lily read it over my shoulder. I heard her sharp intake of breath. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there in my wedding dress in front of a mirror surrounded by flowers I had chosen with love, and I felt the ground under my feet become something uncertain. Something that couldn't hold my weight anymore. What happened next was almost worse than the note itself. Margaret Hollies did not cancel the wedding. She stood outside the bridal suite door and told me, through the wood, that there had been a small change of plan, but that everything was under control and I should please stay calm. Stay calm. As if I were the problem. As if I were the weather system that needed managing. I found out later from Lily, who heard it from the wedding coordinator, who heard it from the florist, that Derek's college girlfriend Courtney Vale had been in the building since that morning. That she and Derek had never truly ended things. That Margaret had known and had been quietly, methodically arranging this for months. The wedding went forward, just with a different bride. My flowers, my peonies, my lavender that meant devotion, decorating someone else's moment. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I put a long coat over my dress and I walked out of the bridal suite, and I found the back corner of the garden, the last row of chairs, set far from the altar, almost behind a curtain of hanging wisteria. I sat down, and I cried. Not the polite kind of crying. Not the kind you dab at with a tissue and apologize for. The deep kind. The kind that comes from somewhere below words. I wasn't thinking about Derek. I wasn't even thinking about Courtney or Margaret or any of it. I was thinking about the girl who arranged wildflowers in mason jars and left them on porches because she wanted people to feel seen. I was thinking about how she had spent 3 years making herself smaller and smaller trying to fit through a door that was never actually open for her. I whispered it out loud without meaning to. I didn't even realize I was speaking until the words were already in the air. I just wanted someone to choose me, just once. Choose me first. The shadow came from my left. Someone sat down beside me, not across from me, not at a polite distance, but right there, one chair away, close enough that I could feel the stillness of another person. I looked up. He was tall, even sitting down. Dark suit, no tie, the collar of his shirt open at the throat. Maybe 32, 33, not flashy, not loud. He had the kind of face that didn't ask for your attention but held it anyway. Calm, dark eyes. He was looking at the altar, not at me, and his expression was completely unreadable. He said, "I'm sorry." I couldn't help but overhear. I stared at him. I was in a wedding dress with mascara on my cheekbones and a coat that didn't match anything, and he was sitting beside me like we were old acquaintances waiting for a bus. I said something like, "It's fine, it's nothing," in that automatic way women say those words when things are the absolute opposite of fine and nothing. He turned and looked at me then, not with pity. That was the thing I noticed first. Not pity, something quieter, like recognition. He said, "Those are peonies up there, aren't they? The arrangements on the altar." I blinked. "Yes," I said, "and garden roses, and some lavender at the base." He nodded slowly. "Someone who loves flowers put those together," he said. "You can tell. I don't know why that broke something open in me." I said I did. I picked everyone. He looked at the altar for a long moment and then back at me. "I'm Nathan," he said. And then he didn't say anything else. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't offer advice. He didn't tell me everything would be okay. He just sat there quietly in the way that some people can sit with you in a hard moment without trying to change it, and I felt, for the first time all day, like I could breathe. We sat in silence for a little while. Then Lily appeared at my elbow with enormous eyes and grabbed my arm and pulled me 2 feet away and whispered so intensely her voice cracked. "Emma, do you know who that is? That is Nathan Cole, as in Cole Industries. As in that man is worth approximately $4 billion, and he doesn't come to events like this unless he's doing someone a very significant professional favor." I looked back at Nathan Cole. He was checking his watch with the expression of a man who had somewhere better to be but had decided, for reasons of his own, not to go there yet. I walked back and sat down. He noticed the shift in my expression immediately. He said, "Did your friend just tell you who I am?" "She mentioned something," I said. "Something about billions." The smile was slow and changed his whole face when it arrived. He said, "Does that change anything?" I thought about it honestly. "It makes me wonder why you're sitting in the back row," I said. He said, because that's where the most interesting person at this wedding is sitting. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I looked at the altar, where the ceremony was reaching some kind of milestone, where Derek was holding Courtney's hands under my peonies and my garden roses and my lavender that meant devotion. And then Nathan Cole stood up, straightened his jacket, and said it, just like that, just as easily as if he were suggesting a change of restaurant. He said, the efficient is still here. The flowers are still beautiful. I would very much like to marry you instead. The world went extremely quiet. I said, I'm sorry. He said it again, not as a joke, not with a grin or a wink or the nervous energy of someone performing a line they rehearsed. He said it the way people say things they mean, clearly and simply and without decoration. I thought I had lost my mind. I thought grief had done something to my hearing. I said, you don't know me. He said, I know you arranged those flowers. I know you've been crying in a coat over a wedding dress for 20 minutes, and you haven't made a single sound loud enough to embarrass anyone else. I know that when your friend pulled you away just now, you walked back and sat back down because you weren't done with the conversation. He paused. That tells me a lot about a person. My heart was doing something irregular and unprofessional. I thought about saying yes. I want to be honest about that. There was one wild, luminous second where I almost said yes, where some part of me that had been pushed down for 3 years wanted to stand up and say yes loudly enough for everyone to hear it. But I didn't, because I am Emma Calloway from outside Savannah, and I don't make decisions in wedding dresses in back gardens when I haven't had anything to eat since 6 in the morning. I said, I'll let you buy me coffee, that's it. We start there. He looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded. He said, fair enough. We walked out together. I was still in the dress. He had his jacket on properly now, a man who looked like he belonged in every room he entered. We passed the edge of the garden, and I heard the murmur move through the guests like a wave. I felt eyes on my back. I felt Margaret Holly's appear somewhere to my left, her voice saying Nathan, in that particular way powerful people say names when they're trying to assert a claim. Nathan turned, looked at her, said something short and polite that I didn't fully catch, and turned back. His hand was at the small of my back, not possessively, just present, like a reminder that I was still upright and still moving and still here. Outside the venue, the air was different, softer. The afternoon light was doing something golden and unhurried over the parking lot, and I stopped walking and just breathed for a second. Nathan waited. We ended up at a diner 40 minutes away. A real diner, with laminated menus and coffee that came in those heavy ceramic cups that keep it warm forever. I was still in the dress. The waitress looked at me with the particular expression of a woman who has seen some things and is professionally committed to seeing nothing. She called me honey and brought me pie without my asking, and I could have wept all over again from the simple kindness of it. Nathan and I talked for 5 hours. I learned that he had built Cole Industries from the ground floor at 23 years old, starting with a logistics company out of a one-room office in Cincinnati. I learned that he had been invited to this wedding as a professional courtesy to the Holly's family, who had once been minor investors in one of his earlier ventures. I learned that he had been planning to stay for exactly 45 minutes and then leave. I learned that he had seen me sitting in the back row from across the garden and had felt, as he put it, like he should go say something, though he hadn't been able to explain to himself exactly why. I told him about growing up in Savannah, about my mother, who cleaned houses for other people her whole life and did it with a dignity that still makes me straighten up when I think about her. About the flower stall I opened at 24 that failed inside of a year because I didn't know anything about margins and too much about beauty. About the fact that I had never once regretted it. He listened the way people listen when they're actually interested, not waiting for his turn to speak. Actually listening. At some point around the 3rd cup of coffee, he said, "You know what I noticed about you first?" I shook my head. He said, "You weren't angry, you were just sad. Most people in that situation lead with anger, it's easier. You went straight to the sad. That takes courage even if it doesn't feel like it." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, I think I'm getting to the angry part now, actually. He smiled again. Good, he said. That part's important too. We left the diner when they started stacking chairs around us. The parking lot was dark and warm and smelled like honeysuckle from somewhere nearby. He walked me to my car and he said, I meant what I said back there. About choosing you. I'm not going to pretend I didn't say it, but I'm also not going to rush you into anything. You've had enough of other people's timelines. I looked at him standing there in the lamplight in his dark suit with his open collar and his calm, dark eyes, and I thought about 3 years of making myself smaller. I thought about 4 words on a folded piece of paper. I thought about lavender and what it means. I said, same time next week. He said, I'll be here. He was. He was there every week after that. Coffee turned to dinner. Dinner turned to long Sunday afternoons at the botanical garden, where I would name every plant we passed, and he would listen with the focused attention of someone filing information carefully away. He showed up at the flower shop one afternoon with a business proposition, which turned out to be a partnership to provide arrangements for a network of women's shelters across the state that his foundation supported. He was professional about it. He made sure I understood it was a real opportunity, not charity, not pity. He paid fairly and he gave credit, and he never once made me feel small. 8 months after the worst day of my life, he came to my apartment on a Tuesday evening. No reservation, no plan. He had a single white peony in his hand, my favorite, and he held it out and said, I'm still not rushing anything. But I want you to know something clearly. I choose you. First, always. I stood in my doorway in my regular clothes in my regular life, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not swept away. Not dazzled. Not rescued. Just chosen. Derek once gave me 4 words on a piece of paper that collapsed my world in a hallway. Nathan gave me 4 words standing in front of me, looking straight into my eyes, and they felt like the first solid ground I had stood on in years. I walked into that wedding as a woman who had been left. I walked out as a woman who was, for the first time, paying attention to the right things. Not the venue, not the guest list, not the name on the invitation. The person sitting beside you in the back row when things fall apart. The one who stays. The one who listens. The one who notices the lavender. That's the one worth choosing. That's the one worth being chosen by. And sometimes, losing every single thing you planned for is the only way to find everything you actually need.